Hello, and welcome to Discovering with Dr. Deb. We're new to podcasting, but I certainly hope this content is helpful to you. Over the course of the next couple seasons, I'll be sharing content about the Enneagram, trauma, and how living in this pandemic has added a lot of trauma to our lives, and how to move on from here. EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, and how it helps people move through and past their trauma, self-care, and more mental health stuff. We'll be spending the first season looking at the Enneagram and how you can use the Enneagram to learn more about yourself and why you do what you do. Discovering the Enneagram with Dr. Deb is next. Hello, I'm here today. We are talking with our twos, the helper and the Enneagram, also the nurturing supporters, so they get the warm fuzzies. Mm-hmm. So I'm here with my Ennea helper 2 here. Actually, you're 3.
I am, but I wing to a 2.
You wing to a 2.
Sometimes.
So my Ennea helper Jason Gilmore, as always, to bring important depth to these conversations.
You know, I love you, Dr. Deb. You always make me sound better than I am.
So we're here today with Heather and Drake, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. I'm going to first go over a little bit from Suzanne Stabile. She's an Enneagram, just wealth of knowledge. She's in Dallas, and you can find her on all the Enneagram stuff. But I'm just going to share a little overview about like what we should know about twos, and then we're just going to kind of unpack some two-ness stuff from you guys. So she says that twos are very interesting people and that they have so many feelings, but the feelings they feel are seldom their own. They pick up the feelings of people around them, and then they act on those feelings, very seldom settling on their own. Twos are helpers or givers on the Enneagram. It was a shock that she says that she found out she helped her daughters in sometimes ways they didn't really want help, but being a helper, you just kind of insert yourself where you think there may be a need. So it's kind of interesting when you go back as you're getting healthy in your two-ness to kind of find out, did I just perceive a need? Was I meeting a need within myself or within somebody else? Historically, a lot of times twos find that they do that quite a bit. They want to be wanted and they want to be loved, and they settle for appreciation. They don't think they're quite lovable enough unless they're doing something for you. So they do for people, but they give until they're empty, and they return to their own lives with no energy left for taking care of themselves. And that's not a good thing for any number, but certainly not for a number that is inclined towards giving. And all giving can be altruistic, and all giving can be manipulative. And that's work a 2 has to do to kind of figure out, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? So it's kind of important, though, to realize that we need twos in our lives. They have this serious, sincere concern for other people. The helping profession might not be what it is if it weren't for twos. You think of teachers, lots of counselors, a lot of my interns that I teach are twos, nurses, counselors, dentists, people in retail even. They're service-oriented people, they're helper peoples. So the sacrificial love and giving of a healthy 2 is valuable to us individually and as a society. So I wanted us to kind of help unpack a little about what it's like when we're a healthy 2 versus maybe when we're not. And so we brought in Heather and Drake to help us do that today. So Drake, let me start with you. Why don't you just tell us who you are and what it is you do, or whatever you want us to know about.
Okay, so my name's Drake. What I do in life, I'm actually a paralegal for a disability attorney, and so I get the privilege of helping, our clients get disability from a government standpoint, and it's something I do love to do, but it can be something, oh gosh, what am I getting myself into? And so that's what I do. I'm a volunteer at Life Church. Been doing that for 5+ years, it seems like, and so.
Right.
Nice.
Yes.
Very good. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the crew.
Yeah, and then this is Heather.
I'm Heather. I am currently a dental student at UMKC School of Dentistry, so I live in Kansas City. mom to a 10-year-old little girl. Her name's Adelaide. She keeps me on my toes. She has a big, bright personality. So, yeah, I was a hygienist for 5 years before I went back to school. So, non-traditional student. So that's a journey in and of itself. But I love what I do, and so I'm very fortunate to have a career that I'm really passionate about.
Right.
Nice.
So how did you learn that you were a 2? How did you discover that?
So a friend of mine had told me about the Enneagram and was kind of reading off the labels. You know, there's one's a perfectionist,
right?
Two's the helper, and at that point I really didn't view myself as helpful. Which, looking back at now, I'm like, that's absurd. 3's a performer, 4's this romanticizer,
right,
and I'm like, I do love to make people feel comfortable, and I feel like I'm a performer sometimes because I really go out of my way to be that smile on someone's face, and I'm a hopeless romantic, so I'm like, maybe I'm the romanticizer. But what really settled it for me was when I read the core motivations of it.
Right.
And
every time.
it was crystal clear that, you know, for 2s, the biggest fear is not being loved or not being lovable.
Right.
And like this core motivation is that they need to be wanted and needed.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that I couldn't relate more to anything in my life. So that's when I knew, I'm like, no, I'm a 2.
Yeah.
What about you, Drake? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So I was at church one day, and some of the pastors were talking like, "Oh, I'm an Enneagram 1. I'm a 9."
Like, what does this mean?
I'm like, what is this? Like, I am a huge personality fanatic. I love the Myers-Briggs. I'm like, oh, this. I'm gonna do this. And so I did the online test, quote unquote, and I went and tested out as a 2, and then Aaron Hodges told me about a book called The Road Back to You.
Right.
And I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm clearly
Spot
a
on.
2, spot on, especially those negative aspects of a 2. I was in that moment of time where I was living them out.
Yes, yes. And you know, you talked about the core motivations, and we've talked before in earlier episodes that it's not what you do, but it's why you do it. You know, it's that need to feel wanted, need to feel loved. And so sometimes people are mistyped. A lot of times, really, you know, people can be mistyped. But if you look at those core motivations to see if they fit. But it's interesting because a lot of us, we read it and we immediately go, like you said, to that negative side of it and go, that's what I can kind of relate to. And but still, there's so many positive things about being a 2, you know, about being that helper. I mean, we need 2s. 2s have this superpower. They can walk into a room and read it. What do people need? And kind of help out. The gift of hospitality, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
So I'm curious
Yeah.
about your friendships.
Oh.
Because 2s tend to be friend to many.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like I have a 2 in my life, and mine and my wife's, and just equally, you know, love her. I mean, just absolutely love her. She's a friend to so many people, but when you get right down to it, her a few relationships are really what. Right. So can you kind of speak to that a little bit? I'm just interested in that because 2s help so many people and do so many things.
Yeah.
I think from the world looking on, we think, oh my gosh, their life is full of friendships or relationships. So
I think I derive a lot of, you know, if I'm not careful, I'll derive a lot of my self-worth, and I've learned to recognize that. But I derive a lot of what energizes me is human interaction in relationships. And so that human connection is, you know, some people find rest by their quiet isolation. Some people energize in different ways. Where I derive my energy is from relationships. And so I will go out of my way to make sure everyone in the room is my friend. But I think it's interesting because on a surface level, because, you know, 2s don't always express their own needs or feelings, I don't have really a ton of depth of
Yeah.
friendships. There's
That's what I was
few
wondering.
people that I'm vulnerable
Yeah.
enough to express my needs to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, threes are similar to that because of the trust factor.
Yeah.
You know, they want and they don't want to take off the mask so that people can really see,
Yeah.
you know, who they really are and see them for their flaws or whatever. But I know it's a different, kind of a
Yeah.
different
Right.
reasoning
For it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. What about you?
I mean, you definitely hit the point. Like, we have so many friendships, but the relationship factor is the hardest because I'm friends with everybody. Everybody knows
Yeah.
who Drake is. Everybody knows. Miss
Yes,
Deb knows. Like,
yes,
she knows
yes.
completely.
I was asking Amy. I said, "Oh, I need a male too." And she goes, "Drake." Oh, I know Drake. Like everybody knows Drake.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's honestly, I don't have that many
Yeah.
deep relationships. My brother, of course, who's overseas, like we mesh well. I don't know what his Enneagram is, but yeah, I have so many friends, but those deep connecting relationships, they're hard to come by, obviously,
Yeah.
for a two.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, what do you love about being a two? I mean, there's a lot. Two's like, you know, they're the helper. They have all these friends, but what do you love about being a two?
I think, I mean, you said it earlier, twos have this almost like supernatural ability to read people's energy. And I feel like that's unique to twos. That
It
we
is.
can walk
It is.
into a room, and if you can tell me with your words that you're having a great day, but if you're not, I know it. And I
So
like
true.
that.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
it's just
So
like,
true.
then I feel like I don't know, I'm closer to this person.
Right.
I can maybe hone in on like what their needs are, what do they need out of this conversation, or I feel like I can be a little bit more helpful in that way. Of course, you know, always trying to be helpful. But I like that. It almost feels like a superpower.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, we just hit that deep connecting level. Like,
Yeah.
I can read what's going on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no one else in this room besides me.
Is
and
that your
person.
thought process always? Is how can I help in this situation?
Oh,
For me, yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
are you always, like,
Yeah.
every situation you come to or every scenario you come to, you're thinking, okay, how can I help make this better or
All the time.
every day?
Wow.
Oh, that's such an interesting
Is
concept.
is that exhausting? Because
Yes.
okay.
In
I
a
would
lot
think,
of
oh,
ways,
my
it's
goodness.
exhausting on one end because obviously I spend all my energy
Right.
investing in other people and
Right.
never investing in me. But at the same time, if everyone in the room is genuinely okay and no one needs me, I almost panic. Like I'm not
Yes.
needed here. I'm not. No one is utilizing me. Therefore, no one really wants me here.
Exactly. I feel the same way. And
You do.
you get this weird sense of fulfillment whenever
Yes.
you do help someone out, when you do read the room. And I'm the same way. Like, I just, no one needs me.
Yep.
Do people really love me right now?
Wow. So your worth a lot of times
It's tied to it.
is tied to
How helpful you are.
how helpful you are to
Right.
someone or what you've done to kind of save the day in a situation
Yes.
or be there
Right.
for
Yes.
someone when they've needed
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So that really fits your role at Life Church, because Drake is the one. Oh, there's this kid that has to go to the bathroom, or this kid is having a meltdown, and Drake is running around like he's plugging all the holes, you know, like
Saving the day.
Yeah.
saving the day.
I'm like an Energizer bunny, like the
You
Energizer
are.
bunny. Like, I
You
go from
literally
each
are.
room to each
Yes.
room. A kid's being disruptive,
Yes.
or they're just not listening.
Yes.
Let me go in
Yes.
there, or if a
Yeah.
leader needs help with this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
That
a
makes-
fun job.
It makes. How did I not know he's a two? Like nothing says two like
Makes
that.
perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. So what about? I mean, like you kind of described a little about what it's like being a two, but like, what are some of the maybe like hard parts about being a two?
Okay, as I said it in the threes or a previous episode, maybe the eights, I can't remember. I said something like, "What made you feel yucky about when
About
you were
being
reading about the like in the Road Back to You mentioned when I read that in the Road Back to You, there were some obvious unhealthy things in my life, and it made me feel yuck. I'm like, but I knew it was true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what are the things that you think, yes, if you're willing to share about the twos that just kind of make you feel yucky?
So for me, it was also the Road Back to You.
Yeah.
Whenever I was like, oh, that's and it was also, like you said, the unhealthy parts that really resonated with me because I was experiencing that a lot. And in a lot of my friendships and just, relationships with anyone, with family, with my sister, whoever, I had noticed, and it had caused a lot of recent conflict, that because I just started dental school, so that was really hard for me. And for unhealthy twos, whenever they're going through something hard in life, they expect everyone that they've ever helped to now come help them.
Yes.
Because I
witnessed
helped
this
you,
recently.
I dropped everything for you.
Yeah.
I don't ask for help very often, and when I do, I need you to drop it right then and be there for me, or else it's an explosion and I turn into an 8.
Yeah, because you
Right.
you have a
That's
pathway to
That's
an
the
eight.
stress
Yeah.
path, right?
So
right.
where I was at in life, and I just started dental school, so it was a new life change, moved to a new city. Everything was really hard, and gosh darn it, if all my friends weren't texting me, checking on me every day, and I was mad at all of them for not going out of their way to be there for me. And so that was a really unhealthy behavior that I noticed whenever I had started reading that book, that I was like, I feel yucky.
You're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, it was weird. I had this self-loathing of myself on top of, I've helped all these people, like, where are you when I need you the most right now? I felt that was my icky. Like, I hated myself for the longest. And so it took a while, honestly, to get back to a place where I love myself, but I also have those boundaries of it too. We have to set boundaries as twos.
Right.
Because if we don't, that yucky part will come out.
Right.
I know that's a real unhealthy spot for twos, where they I don't know the right word, maybe like possessive of friendships, or maybe I know one person that I could tell that they were a 2, and they were very possessive of their friendships, and can you see that?
Yeah, I can see
maybe
that.
being as an unhealthy,
Yeah.
unhealthy trait.
Yeah, very much so. That I hadn't thought about that, but I can see that.
Being upset when they didn't reciprocate,
wanting to be the special friend in that life,
yes,
or relationship
yeah.
in that life.
Yeah.
Interesting. You kind of talked to Drake about just boundaries. So I know when you're inserting yourself everywhere, is it important just to have boundaries, like when you're relating with other people, or when they're relating with you? Both? What's that like for you? How do you
I feel like it's when I'm
navigate that?
relating to them. Like, am I personally going to relate to this person?
Okay.
In like a relationship type of feeling. Like, if I'm not, no. That's where I hit that boundary.
Okay.
Especially in the church setting, like all around. Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I remind myself, is this going to be fulfilling to me?
Yeah.
To do this, because
Yeah.
I love to do it, I
Right.
want to do it, but
Right.
it's not. If it's not going to be fulfilling, no, I'm going to take a step back from it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say no.
It is hard to say
so
no.
hard.
Yeah. What about for you?
I can certainly relate to that. I think on one aspect, twos will exhaust themselves being a friend to many,
Right.
like you had noticed.
Yeah.
And there's times whenever I will really go out of my way to befriend someone who I don't necessarily want to be friends with. And I'm like, why am I doing this?
Right,
And so
right.
really setting this boundary
Yeah.
of like, what does Heather enjoy? Who
Right.
does Heather enjoy to be around?
Right. Who is Heather?
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
just
Yeah.
like kind
Yeah.
of setting that boundary of, I don't have to go 110% in every single relationship,
Right.
especially if I don't really want to be a part of that
Right.
relationship.
And it's okay not to have to be
Right.
part of that relationship. Right. Yeah. What were you
Well,
gonna say?
I was going to say that something she said just
Yeah.
jogged my memory. Like, both of you will know this reference, but like Mary and Martha in the Bible, Martha was very upset because she was doing everything that needed to be done to be prepared. You know the story I'm talking about.
Yep.
Right.
And she just got very upset because she was the doer. She was in there doing it. And Mary was at the feet of Jesus, basically, getting probably the recognition and everything else, attention and everything else. So, I mean, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what's it feel like? Have you ever felt that way, I guess is my question. Martha almost was a little resentful, I think, because she recognized that she was, so can you take on, I guess my question is, can you take on too much that you feel a little resentful for the people around you that are not taking on as much?
I struggle with resentment a lot as a 2. Absolutely, because I feel oftentimes, if I'm not setting those healthy boundaries with myself and with others, I will overexert myself. I will help way more than is even necessary, to the point that I'm exhausted. And then whenever I'm exhausted, I resent everyone else as if it's their fault that I'm exhausted. As if, like, you're not helping enough. That's why I'm having to do it, and I'm exhausted because you're not.
Right.
And it's
exactly.
just this,
I'm helping more than you're helping.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then I'm almost angry at them
Right.
that I'm not meeting my own needs, or
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have definitely seen those traits in myself and in some of my relationships if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more.
What she said.
What she said.
Exactly what she said.
So I'm curious, because I've got a lot of 2s that I know. When they don't feel that they're needed, what happens? What happens to you when you feel like I'm not needed here, or there's nothing I really can do to help? Do I have a purpose there? Is that part of the mindset or the thought? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I feel like if you're in the negative
If you're unhealthy.
spectrum, you're unhealthy part of your 2.
Yeah.
You're like, they just don't want me here. They don't love me enough. They don't need my help. I'm not the best. But when you're in the healthy 2, you realize, hey, it's okay. I'm not needed here. I'm not wanted here because this person can do a better job at doing whatever task it is than I can. And so when you're at that healthy, you have that realization, like, okay, it's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Okay, help me get inside your head when you walk in a room. Because when I walk in a room, I'm like, hey, everybody.
You're a 3.
I'm a
but
3.
You're a 3.
But, like, what happens when you guys walk into a room? Because you're typically not your, hey, people. So, what is that like? You know what I mean? Like, you're walking in the room. Like, what's the first thing you do when you walk? Okay, let's say you're going to, like, a function and there's lots of people there. What are you feeling like? Bring us up to that point of walking into the room, and then tell us what it feels like.
I feel like I gravitate to the 2s of the room. Like, I feel like we know who is a 2, and we gravitate to each other.
I had never thought of that.
Do you do that too?
I agree.
2? Do you do that too? No pun intended.
Totally pun intended.
I absolutely agree. One
I
of
hadn't
my,
thought about that.
Actually, 2 of my best friends in dental school are both 2s. And it's not like 2s have a ton of deep friendships, and we do find each other.
We do.
I agree.
Really? So, so you go to a function and you walk in the room, and like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, okay, what does that person need, or is that your mindset?
The first thing I do is look at body language. I don't know about you. When I walk into a room, I am immediately reading and trying to feel like their energy. The first thing I do when I meet anyone, whether I've known them or it's for the first time, is, and maybe this is unhealthy, I don't know, but I try to figure out what they feel at that moment. I'm so big on whoever I'm talking to, what emotion are they, like, where are they emotionally?
You try to meet them in their emotion?
Sometimes, yeah. I think now that I'm a little bit more of a healthier 2, I just want to understand their emotion and just be there for them. Whenever I was an unhealthy 2, I would try to mirror their and like make it seem like
me too.
Right. If they're sad, I'm also sad, even if I wasn't.
That's kind of what I meant by meeting them at their emotion.
Yeah.
Is that what you? Yeah. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
What about you?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I do too. I feel like at an unhealthy 2, like when I would just like that person's wrong for doing this to you, or you should have done this. I can relate. This happened to me. But as a healthy two, I'm like, I empathize with them. Okay, I get it. It's a rough situation. Maybe you can do this, and I don't know. I don't know. I take back what I just said a second ago.
He's retracting.
I'm retracting my statement.
It's okay to retract.
Oh gosh.
It's hard, isn't it? Because
It
let me
is.
tell you why I specifically asked that question. He fell into my trap. I specifically asked this question because as a two, it seems like you want so badly to help them that you would even almost stand in their spot in times to try to help them, especially if it was someone you really loved or was really concerned about. It's almost like you want to insert yourself, you want to pull them out and put yourself in. And I know that with threes, we don't care about ourselves or anyone else, and you guys care more about everyone else. And then fours are like, I'm only about myself. You know what I mean? And we're all in the heart triad. You know, we're all feelers, big feelers. But twos are like, I only care about you.
Yeah.
Who cares what happens?
To
me
than their own.
You know, and so it's just interesting because I think twos. If I were a two, this is what I'm thinking. If I were a two, I think I would find myself trying to insert myself, like, let me take your spot, you know? And so in conversations, when you're talking to people, you're like, oh, I know. You know, it tends to be like you take on that emotion or whatever.
That's why there's a lot of two counselors.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they can empathize.
And teachers and all the things that you mentioned. Yeah, because they want to help them so bad.
Yeah.
So what about what are things earlier on in your life, like childhood, that you may think kind of molded you
contributed to your
two-ness? You know, it could be anything from, you know, and it's really about perception, because really it doesn't have to be something traumatic that happens. It is just how we as a child perceived that. I mean, I can still remember things that my third grade teacher told me, and about an oral book report that I did, and it gave me such a confidence boost. And she doesn't even know what she was doing. I mean, she didn't even realize what she was doing. But I needed that affirmation. I need to know that I had rocked that oral book report, you know. And so, how is that for you guys?
I think, so growing up, I'm the oldest, and at a young age, my mom decided to go to college, and so it was, you know, my parents and me and my sister, and so my dad was then working extra while my mom quit her job to be a full-time student. I was, you know, the older sibling, so helping take care of my sister a lot, and what I kind of perceived was that if I were to, you know, express my own needs, or if I were to need help myself, if I ever asked for help, then that would cause even more stress to my already stressed out parents. And so I was like, you know, I should never ask for help, and if anything, I need to constantly be helping with my sister. I need to help make dinner. I need to help clean up dinner.
So as the oldest child, you assumed this responsibility, and took it on as this is the responsible thing to do.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know where along the way.
But I think that speaks to it.
I think that does absolutely speak to it. What about you?
Oh gosh, so I feel like, I don't know, like I was with my grandmother all the time, and so we always grew up going to a predominantly Black Baptist church, and we were taught at a young age, whoever is the eldest in the room, you stop what you're doing, you help them, you get what they need.
Of course.
If they're feeling, if someone in the church is having this feeling, you stop and you pray for them. Like, you do everything in your power to do something for others. And so I feel like that's what helped bring along my two-ness.
I
mean, I also had some traumas of the past, you know, being having a mother who was like a drug addiction, and so I had to step up and help my younger brother, like, hey, let's get our homework done, let's do this, let's do that. Like, I put my feelings aside, and push them
You assume
down.
that role,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. So your wants and needs were not as important. You were, again, kind of taking that responsibility and taking one for the team.
Yes.
Right. Right. So Drake, this one's coming for you.
Okay.
So you read the road back to you.
Yes.
So you kind of understand, like, the Enneagram, it's a personality assessment. It's not like scripture or anything, but it helps you know, like, these are the things I tend to do based on kind of my personality and core motivations, core fear, all that kind of stuff. So how has, like, just your knowledge and the understanding you do have of the Enneagram and your 2, like, how has that affected you?
In a positive sense or a negative sense?
Oh, both.
Both? Okay. So in
love
a
it.
positive, healthy sense, I'm
Okay.
able to communicate to my other Enneagram, personnels. I don't know how to word that. But
Personals, I love it. We'll call it that.
We'll call it that.
That's right. We'll create a
That
new
Okie
word.
intuition, I guess. I'm able to communicate with them my feelings, how I feel in that moment exactly. But in the negative aspect, I'm like, I shut off, I'm introverted, leave me alone. And so, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, has just having some knowledge about these tendencies and about yourself, in what way has it helped you? Just kind of knowing these things about yourself.
It's helped me to not go into a mental downfall in a sense, because I feel like as 2s we're feelers, and we take on so much of someone else's emotions that it can bog us down in our day-to-day life. And so I've learned to, of course, build up that wall to where I'm not going to let this truly bring me down in a sense.
And you mentioned earlier boundaries, so it sounds like it's helped with that too.
Yes, because
Yeah.
I'll help.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll help.
Right.
I'm there.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah. What about you, Heather?
I would agree. I think the biggest thing that's come out of my Enneagram journey is boundaries and learning to draw those with myself and other people, and just learning to recognize that my feelings are like worth acknowledging, and that my feelings are worth exploring and processing, and that's not a waste of anyone's time. That it's okay to take time out of someone else's day in a conversation or whatever to communicate how I'm feeling. And I'm recently engaged, and I've learned that it's actually saves us a lot of frustration if I will just come forth and express, my feelings and my needs, rather than waiting for him to read my mind. So that's been a really great and healthy, beautiful thing that's come out of this.
Right. And he's a 3.
He's a 3.
So they're not the best mind readers.
Power to the 3.
But
no, we're not. We're not good at mind reading.
He will talk about his needs and feelings constantly, because 3s love to talk about themselves. And
Yes,
so
of course.
if 2s aren't careful, I can just kind of get lost in always letting him speak. And then if, earlier we talked about resentment, if I don't feel like my needs are ever getting met, then I'm like, so just learning to communicate. I think that you really hit the nail on the head with that one. And having the courage to speak my emotions.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So oftentimes 2s and 9s get mistyped. Yeah, and I'm a 9, and so I've been mistyped as a 7, as a 2 before. But and 2s and 9s both, one of the things they have in common, they're very other focused. Which is really good, but it's just kind of important to go back to those like core motivations, because 9s don't like to put themselves out there. But for a whole different kind of reason.
I can see how they would be. My sister's also a 9.
Okay.
And there is a little bit of a crossover, because I think 2s are also people pleasers, and we like to be like the mesh between, if there's 2 conflicting parties, we like to be the one that like makes everyone happy with each other in a room. And so I can see how 2s and 9s would be mistyped.
What's it like for you guys when there is conflict? Because I know 9s, we avoid conflict like the plague, but I mean, you want to be a helper. So what's it like when there's tension?
Oh gosh.
I'm like waiting on you. It depends on if I'm, healthy or not. So like 2s go to an 8.
Yes.
And if I'm not
Yeah,
healthy,
Yes.
then in conflict I'm very assertive.
Okay.
I'm like this driver. I all of a sudden get very loud and forceful, which is not like me.
Right, no.
So if I'm unhealthy in a conflict, I will become this just like bullheaded, very assertive person. I think when I'm healthy spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, and I'm in conflict, I'm much more empathetic and genuinely like listen to the other side and let them speak their emotions instead of me try to assume their emotions.
Yeah, you try to be that voice of reason whenever
Right.
someone has a conflict. Because I'm assertive in the same way, like boom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to find that voice of reason between both sides. I'm like, hey, I get it. Y'all are angry, but let's find the middle ground and let's figure a way around this.
What's the best thing about being a 2? Like, like for you, what are you proud of? Like, what is the one thing that really sets you apart as a 2 that makes you feel like that I'm glad that that's a part of my character.
As I came into the Enneagram, and
It's okay to talk about yourself. Permission from the 3s to talk about yourself.
it was a journey because, on one hand, I can relate to the self-loathing, especially reading the chapter about 2s. 2s are very sensitive to any criticism. And that was so hard for me to read. And I took it to heart, and I took it very personally for a long time. Like, why would they write that about me? So coming out of that and learning to love myself was a journey in and of itself. But now that I feel like I do really appreciate who I am and who the way I'm made and who I've been called to be, I love. It's weird to say. I love this about myself.
No,
As
say
a 2,
it.
I'm like,
that's
what
what I
did
said.
I
I just gave you permission. Say it.
I do love that I'm extremely empathetic. I think that I've seen recently, especially in leadership, I'm really fascinated by leadership, and I think within that realm, I have the ability to foster a culture of just genuine fellowship in a family. And when people come together to work, it doesn't feel like work. It truly feels like I'm hanging out with my friends. And I have grown to recognize that I'm good at that. And I really love that about myself.
Yes, that's something to be proud of because respect comes along with that.
Right.
And you build relationships with people.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
good. What about you?
Oh gosh.
You knew this was coming.
I knew this was coming, and I've been thinking all day and all week, what am I going to say? Because I don't know what to say. No, I'm joking. I would say the stories. Like, I love how we help out so much. We're not like 3s. We're going to boast about our stories. Like, oh, hey, I did this. Like,
He's coming at me. I feel like he's coming at me. I'm just kidding.
But you never know what you're going to get yourself into, and that could be something you can keep in, personally for ages. No one will know, but you'll know in your heart, like, oh my gosh, I got to do this one day, and
the experiences or the things that you get to do to help people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I know you've done in your leadership role in dental school and with your district has been a lot of work with racial awareness, and which is very 2.
That's very 2.
Very 2. Like, speak to that a little bit. Like, how did the 2 in you really get that going? Because you're putting yourself out there, you're speaking all over the place, and
I actually recently told this story at the height of the pandemic. We didn't really have anything to distract us. We had to actually pay attention to what was going on in the world. And I have never been I truly never cared about what was going on with like political climate
right,
or
social
issues.
justice, right.
Because in my own privilege, it's never adversely affected me. And so I remember watching, like, it like really makes me emotional to talk about it, but watching the video of George Floyd with the officer's knee on his neck, and I remember sitting in my bed and I just wept, and it broke something inside of me that I couldn't fathom. And then I started to read and look into it, and I realized, oh my gosh, this isn't this one story, you know, and I really felt, you know, put my feelings into how that must have felt in that moment, and for people all over the country watching this. And I remember, like, the next day waking up thinking, like, we're supposed to just go to work, and after knowing that happened, how am I supposed to act normal? That broke me. And so that really catapulted me into learning about oppression and privilege and social systems and justice and injustice, and where all that it just sent me down this rabbit hole that
as
became
a
very
dental
fascinating.
student, it's not like she's in
Wow.
law school, you know?
Right.
But you notice what she said? She said she inserted herself
Yes.
into that.
Right.
Yes.
And that's something, honestly, that you may view as a weakness, but I view as a superpower for the
Yeah.
twos. We've talked a lot about superpowers kind of in each, and others may view those things as weaknesses, but really, goodness, what if we had more people in the world that were less selfish?
That we're right, and we're
Yeah.
taking
and
action.
we're
when they
putting themselves
have-
in other people's shoes,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's very, I mean, to me, that's a very admirable quality about a two, especially when it's in health. you know?
Right. I think twos also will, like, always fight for, like, stand up for vulnerable people. Like, twos, if they see someone hurting, a two will go to the ends of the earth to help them not hurt anymore.
Okay, so that's also in an 8.
Yes, that is. Eights have the justice.
They do, and I have seen that in some of my two friends that all of a sudden, when they didn't care about nothing, all of a sudden they care about this.
Right.
And I'm like,
Like,
why
where did that come
is
from?
this such a big thing?
Right,
Like, you know what I
right.
mean? Where did that come from? That's
the
probably
path.
probably the path. Yeah.
So Drake, 8 out of 9 of us aren't twos. Like, we aren't twos. So what can others do to show the twos in their lives that they matter, that they are loved, that they are wanted?
What do you need us to know about you,
What do
Drake?
Honestly, words of affirmation for me specifically as a two, like, I want to know, like, hey, you're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I need you to be vocal. I need you to communicate with me, because that lets me know, hey, you're doing. And Amy, one of our pastors at the church, like, she knows that now. She knows that, hey, I have to speak life into Drake, and if I don't, he's going to go down that negative, unhealthy too. So for me, words of affirmation, it could be gifts, acts of service for two or something like that. But just letting me know I'm doing it, a great job, and it's appreciated. But it has to be sincere, because as two, we're mind readers.
You
in
can
a
sniff
sense.
that out.
We can sniff it out.
Exactly.
Like,
That's really a good
it
You
point.
has to be
sniff
truly
that out.
sincere.
Yep.
Yep.
I would agree with that. If someone gives, like, a blank, well, I'll pray for you, or something that's just like, I'm thinking of you, and then I'm
You
like,
treat that as empathy, right? Do
you
treat
can
that as empathy?
you can tell when it's just like
When
a
it's
conversation.
sincere.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Or when they're, like, genuinely concerned, and it's like, how can I pray for you? There's just a difference in, like, the emotion and
Apathy.
Right.
Treat that as apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I said
yes.
empathy. I meant apathy. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
They're close.
Yeah. In the same family.
Right.
Ends with Y. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So that's what you think. So other people just being sincere, authentic with you goes a long way.
Yeah, because if others are not sincere, and there's not, like, a depth to it. I don't know. I almost feel like I'm being mocked, or like I'm just.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think a depth and a sincerity is really important, because twos can pick up when that's not there.
Right. Right. So one thing I usually ask at the beginning, and I didn't, like, tell us you're a 2 without telling us you're a 2. What would that be?
Oh.
This is always a fun one,
I know.
because we get such different
I know.
answers for each number.
When it didn't click to me at first when Deborah had said, this is when, in the location of when we're going to record the podcast, that it was the same weekend as my daughter's baptism, and I would already be close to the studio. And so
I know where you're going with this.
I was already rearranging, seriously, my entire week so that I could drive from Kansas City to Van Buren to be here, because I could not bring myself to ask her if it was okay for me to Zoom, or could I do it a different weekend, or I was willing to, and I was completely prepared to drive 8 hours round trip for this podcast tape.
Wow.
But luckily it worked out when my daughter got back.
See?
That's a 2.
But
That's
just
a 2.
like neglecting all the logic and what would make sense for my own week.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Of course. I'll just
Right.
jump in the car.
Right. Let me
on
just-
down to Van Buren.
Right.
Wow.
Yes. That fits.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
fits.
So
What
Drake,
about you?
tell us you're a 2 without telling us.
Okay.
You're a 2.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm sorry you feel this way. How can I help you today? Is there anything that you need? Do you need food? Do you need help around the house? Like, I hate manual labor, but I will do it for you.
Is that true? 2s do things they hate to do to help people?
All the
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time. That's when you had said earlier, like, am I doing, this is actually going to bring me fulfillment. Why am I doing this? I'm like, oh gosh, I could learn from that. I need to set that boundary for myself, because I help in ways that I hate. I'm like, I don't enjoy this.
It's like asking yourself that question.
Yes.
Because one of the things that we try to say in every episode is it's not what you do,
Right.
it's why you do
Right.
what you do. And so, what could motivate you to do something and what can motivate a 3 or a 4 or a 9 are totally different reasons why we do what we do.
Right.
Yep.
We could all do the same thing, but do them for different, have different motives or different reasons for doing it. So,
Well, we're just going to wrap up. We've got one last question, and this is important.
and this is the funnest one always. We get the coolest answers.
Right. So what didn't we say about 2s that, like, we need to know?
Or you want the world to know.
You want the world to know about 2s. This is what you need to know about us.
I think 2s are usually pretty self-sacrificing. And, we've learned that they'll often neglect their own needs. And, obviously 2s have needs too. But I think one thing is that 2s, although they are usually the supporting cast, we really enjoy being the main character. It doesn't mean that we don't want...
I like that you say that.
I do love that. I do love that.
2s don't seek out attention, and they don't seek out first place, but I enjoy
But
being
you
in
love it
first
when you
place.
get to.
Right, and so
Yeah.
it's not something... I'm not scared of being the leader. I'm not... I just... I'm not going to make anyone else feel bad to get there. I'm always conscious of everyone else's feelings, but I think sometimes 2s can be perceived as
the vice president,
right?
And not the president,
not the most successful, or that they're not as driven.
The
And we
armor bearers.
really are,
right?
So,
right.
What about you, Drake?
That's good.
Oh gosh, I feel that for me, like, I was thinking about this too. As a 2, we're surrounded by so many people. If you want to know or help out your 2, especially if they're in an unhealthy place, for me, I'm silent. Like, I will do what you need me to do, but it's an unhealthy silence. I'm not talking. I'm saying to myself, if you really want to help your two, read them and see, because that's one of my triggers. You know for a fact if I'm being quiet, something is wrong.
Right, right.
It means something when somebody takes as much time to invest in you as you know you have in other people.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd feel invisible then.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's good.
So good.
Oh, well, we've learned a lot about twos.
We have.
I know.
Thank
I love
you.
this. Thank you guys so much for sharing your two-ness with the world and helping us. I learned a lot about twos.
So I resonate a lot with what both of you said because I wing.
You wing too?
I wing real hard to the 4.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I'm a 3 and I wing real hard to the 4. Very, all up in my feels, all that stuff, you know.
I love feelings.
Yeah, creative, all of those sorts of things. But the older I get, the more I can see myself. And I think the more healthier I am as a 3, the more I can see the balance. And somebody told me one time, you know, you fly better with both wings.
Right,
Aww.
right.
And so I'm like, okay, that's good. I want
Right.
to have a healthy balance between. But yeah, so I resonated a lot with what they said today, and even learned a thing or two.
I
So.
did too.
Yes.
I did too. I have a lot of 2s in my life, so I know I need to pay attention and validate, and then support and encourage so they can rise to the top too. So that was great. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being with us.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
our next episode, we will be talking with some 3s. So we'll see you then. If this content has been helpful to you, I'd appreciate it if you would please rate the podcast, post it, and share it on social media. And also post a review. If you'd like to get in contact with me, my phone is 479-561-7600, or email Dr. Deborah at anchoredhopecounseling.net or Dr. Deborah at drdebfordoctors.com. Our website at www.anchoredhopecounseling.net has some useful information, and you can also reach out to me through the website. Remember, you are enough just the way you are, and you are loved.